Welcome back to the channel, my name is Jack and a very happy new year to you. I've been using the iPhone 14 Pro Max for about 4 months now since release day, and I wanted to give a bit of a sort of long-term review of the phone now that I've had it for some time and some of that new phone hype has died down a bit. Not everyone upgrades as soon as new phones come out, of course too, so you might be someone who is looking to upgrade soon. And Apple has tweaked and added a few new software features since release as well, as we'll see. So let's start first with the design. I am still a big fan of this design. It's very much an evolution of the 12 and 13, which did also take inspiration from the iPhone 4 and 5 with the squared off edges and the flat sides. I prefer it over the rounded sides on the 6S to the 11. The round sides are a bit more comfortable in the hand, but a bit more slippery to hold. On the back, again, there's nothing too drastic in terms of design changes, except for those camera modules. They are getting pretty big now on the back, taking up over half the width of the whole phone. Colour-wise, we got a new deep purple to go alongside the silver, gold and the space black. I have seen all of the colours in person and I think that they all look amazing, whichever one you decide to go for. My last two iPhones, the 10 and the 12 Pro Max, were both silver, so this time I went for space grey, which looks so sleek and I just love the look of it. But I do find myself constantly having to wipe this thing down with a cloth when I'm showing it in videos. It gets so dusty, especially around the camera modules. In everyday use though, it's fine, of course. Most people won't be looking at their phone under a macro lens. Otherwise, I have no real complaints about the design here. Apart from the lightning port on the bottom, I do think that it really is time for a faster and more universal USB-C connector. If you're deciding between the 14 Pro or the Pro Max, the only differences here are the larger screen and battery on the Max. There's no differences in the cameras or really anywhere else. So that should make choosing a lot easier. And just to mention, the OLED display is phenomenal. Everything looks super sharp and vibrant. Watching videos, especially in HDR, is incredible with the bright colours and the high contrast ratio. And of course then there's the ProMotion with the 120Hz refresh rate, making everything super smooth when you're navigating the phone. The biggest design change with this iPhone is that new display cutout for the front camera and the Face ID sensors, the dynamic island as they called it. It takes a big focus in all of the marketing for the phone. They show it as this like super energetic, always active thing at the top of the phone, but in reality it's a lot more subtle than that, which we'll get into. It's actually two separate cutouts, a pill shape and a circle. Apple's turning off those OLED pixels in between for one seamless long pill shape. If the light hits the screen at just the right angle, the illusion does break a little and you'll see both the cutouts, but I already see it and it really doesn't bother me. Apple's using the dynamic island in a couple of really cool ways. Firstly, they use that in-between space for the little camera and mic indicator lights when an app is using either of those, bringing them front and center and making them a lot more visible than just shoving them up in the corner of the status bar like before. And second, it's integrated with a ton of pop-ups and system alerts from across iOS, showing AirPods connectivity, silent and ring modes, AirDrop progress, charging status. There's actually a pretty big list of things that it covers. Most of these pop-ups existed before in some way, but now the dynamic island unifies them all in one place with a consistent design language. Then there's how it integrates with live activities. When you're playing a song and you swipe to go home, the music app flies up into the dynamic island. You can see the album artwork and an audio waveform. You can press and hold to bring up the playback controls, or you can tap to jump right back to the app. It works with multiple activities at once. And since I first had the phone and I made my unboxing and first impressions video, Apple has made some changes. You can swipe across the island to hide an activity or switch between which one of them is being in the main focus. This can be a bit fiddly at first. You do have to sort of learn what swipes do what, but it is useful once you get the hang of it. And it's not just Apple's own apps which can use the island. As they announced, it's been opened up to third-party apps too. Now, in saying that, there aren't actually many apps that have a need for live activities, and even fewer that I actually use. I have seen apps like Carrot Weather use it, flight trackers like Flightly, and snowboarding apps like Slopes, but these are all apps which I just don't happen to use. Uber and Uber Eats too, I think, have just recently added support, which I do use those, but not enough to have seen them in live activities just yet. Which kind of goes back to my earlier point. The dynamic island isn't this always in your face, always active thing at the top of your screen like it is in the ads. It's there when it needs to be and then it goes away when it's not needed, which is a good thing. I don't want a constant stream of apps taking over the top of my screen. I still think it's a really clever integration of hardware and software. Those cutouts have to be there if you don't want to sacrifice image quality with a front camera like on some other phones that have got cameras under the front display. So why not use that space to serve the operating system and show the user things that they might want to see. This is something only on the Pro iPhones this generation, but I'm sure that we'll see it trickle down to the rest of the lineup in the next few years. The Pros also got some new display tech, allowing for an always-on display on the lock screen, something which pretty much every major flagship has had for some time now. Apple's definitely playing catch-up. When it dims, you can still see the time, your widgets, any notifications that have come through. But Apple has done this in a very Apple style. They're also dimming the wallpaper in such a way that it's still visible, preserving any of the colours and skin tones so that they still look normal. Now, this hasn't been to everyone's liking. I know a few people that have just turned off the always-on display because it might be distracting, or it's making people constantly check their notifications, or because even when it's dimmed, it is still kind of bright. It definitely takes some getting used to. But again, Apple has made some tweaks here. There are now toggles in the settings so you can turn off the wallpaper and even the notifications, leaving just the time and your widgets on a completely black screen, more like how Always On is implemented on some other phones. I get notifications on, but I have turned the wallpaper off, as while it is nice to see, I don't really need it and I prefer the cleaner, more minimalist look with it turned off. I will say too, I do feel like I'm getting slightly better battery life with the wallpaper off. I've not really tested it, so it might just be in my head, but it would make sense to get less battery drain with the wallpaper off and fewer pixels turned on. But overall, I do really like having the always on display. I'm glad that it's here. It can be a little bit distracting at first, but it's useful to glance at. And thankfully, Apple has listened to feedback and they're letting us choose a little bit about how we want it to work. The other big change with this iPhone is with the camera system. All the cameras, including the front camera, have had a big boost in low light performance thanks to the Photonic engine. That's Apple's new image processing pipeline. This is the first iPhone to have autofocus on the front camera, which is a very welcome addition. Selfie photos definitely feel a lot sharper than before compared to the old fixed infinity focus on previous iPhones. But the headline spec was, of course, the new 48 megapixel main camera sensor. The first megapixel increase on the iPhone for quite some time, since the iPhone 6S. Now, by default, the main camera uses pixel binning, taking the 48 megapixel image data and outputting a 12 megapixel photo. You have to enable ProRAW in settings and then in the camera app to shoot at the full 48 megapixel resolution. I have been really impressed with the picture quality. There's so much extra detail in the ProRAW shots with more resolution for cropping and reframing your images. I also find them to be much less overprocessed and oversharpened compared to standard shots. I do think that the iPhone can be a bit heavy sometimes with the post-processing, which isn't as apparent in ProRAW. But shooting in ProRAW does have some drawbacks. Firstly, the photos are big, sometimes reaching 10 times the file size of a standard photo. So you're going to need a lot of internal or iCloud storage if you're going to leave this turned on. It also takes a lot longer to take a photo. It takes about a second or so, which doesn't sound like much, but that can be the difference between getting a shot or just missing it entirely. And lastly, it disables live photos, which I really like having on. I really like seeing my photos come to life with the moments just before and after taking it. So there are definitely some trade-offs. I was hoping we might get some sort of middle ground with an option for 48 megapixel standard photos, but Apple hasn't added that yet. I am really hoping that they do. I know that there are some third-party apps that do this, like Halide, so you can take a 48 megapixel photo with a smaller file size, but again, you don't get live photos here as Apple locks that to their own camera app. Across the board though, I have been really impressed by all of the cameras on the 14 Pro. Generally, colours and images look really consistent across each camera. We also get the 2x zoom back by cropping into the 48 megapixel sensor, and overall it's a noticeable upgrade, even coming from a 12 Pro Max. I did recently make a video comparing all of the iPhones that I still have, that's the 6S, the 10 and the 14 Pro Max, with some surprising results. So if you are using an older iPhone and you're wondering how much of an upgrade the 14 Pro really is, definitely go check out that video, I'll link to it below. Performance with the A16 Bionic chip has been fantastic, which is no surprise. Apple's been putting out some incredible chips in recent years. Everything from opening apps to switching between them, playing games. Performance after 4 months is still stellar without any slowdowns. Rarely do I get any hiccups. I've edited ProRAW shots in Darkroom on the go, no problem. Used InShot to edit some drone footage. Battery life has also been great. It's definitely an upgrade from the 12 Pro Max. Some people have said that they're getting slightly less usage compared to the 13 Pro Max, but I can't really comment on that as I skip the 13s. But easily it lasts me a whole day or more in normal usage. If I'm taking a lot of photos or videos, that can of course drain it faster. I'll often use an Anker MagGo 622 or 633 to top up on the go. These are super handy MagSafe batteries that just snap onto the back of your phone, or you can use a cable for a faster, more efficient charge. I know I don't show up about these on the channel, but I do really think that they're nifty pocket power banks. For those that want to know about battery health, I've had this phone since launch day and I'm still sitting at 100% capacity. I don't really do anything to try and actively manage its health. I have optimized charging enabled and that's about it. Most of the time I'm charging with a Belkin MagSafe charger at 15 watts or the MagGo, or with one of my Anker chargers that I keep in my everyday bag. I don't often find myself needing to reach for the charger though, to be honest, on most days, so I'm really impressed with the battery life. Both the Pro and the standard 14's got a couple of new safety features like car crash detection. Thankfully, I've not been in any accidents myself, but there have already been some stories of people's iPhones calling emergency services for them after an accident, getting them the help they need faster, which is impressive and always good to hear. There have been some reports of some false positives too though, with phones falsely detecting a crash from people riding on roller coasters, for example. So there's some work that needs to be done to sort of try and avoid that. Maybe they can sort of geo-fence off theme parks or something. Emergency SOS via satellite also launched in the US and Canada, and more recently in the UK, France, Germany, and in Ireland. This feature lets you use satellites to contact emergency services when there's no phone signal, and once more there's been stories of this helping people in real situations. Again, I've not had to use it, but there is a way to demo the feature without actually making a call. You can see what it's like to make a connection with a satellite and follow it through the sky. Go through the questions that it asks you. Sending messages via satellite takes longer than traditional SMS. So by asking you a few questions about the type of emergency, there's less of a back and forth, and in a real situation, you can get the help you need even faster. Both of which are great features, and I'm sure they'll go on to help even more people in future. Overall, I'm still very happy with the 14 Pro Max after 4 months. It's a solid upgrade coming from the 12 Pro Max, from just the cameras alone, as someone who takes a lot of photos and videos, with everything else being a really nice added bonus. With the camera upgrades, the dynamic island, the incredible performance and the battery life, I'd say that this is a phone that you can upgrade to and stick with for a good few years to come if you're looking for something long lasting. There's really no need for most people to upgrade every year now, unless you really like having the latest tech. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and let me know. Drop a comment if you have any questions or thoughts, and if you want to see more tech videos and reviews from me, hit subscribe and the bell. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.